I'm going to ask you because you have shared this story in the past about your contest winning pasta sauce or spaghetti sauce. And we get so many questions about wanting that recipe. And so I'm just going to ask you here. Tell us about this spaghetti sauce.
Yeah, everybody wants to know about the magic behind the spaghetti sauce. So first of all, my grandma had a restaurant and it was in Detroit, and she had just amazing pasta sauce too. And growing up, every Sunday, if you're Italian, Sunday is grandma's gravy day. So you'd go and you'd have pasta with the whole family. And my grandma's sauce was so good. And when she was about 85 years old, my dad, who's not her daughter, it's my mom's grandma, my dad, and she, by the way, has 8 sons and daughters. But it was my dad who said, wait a minute, this woman has the most amazing food on the planet. Everybody agrees. And nobody's written down any of these recipes anywhere. And of course, my grandma was like, well, I just make it as I go. I do it by flavor. I do it by the day. It would always taste the same though. That's what's interesting, even though she's every day, like every time doing it differently. So my dad said, okay, well, I'm coming over next Sunday and I'm going to write down everything that you create in this sauce. And so he showed up and they cooked a bunch of different things, and she would cook and he would be like, wait, I got to measure that. Wait, she'd go to throw something in. Wait, we got to measure that. My dad would measure everything, write it all down. And wouldn't you know it, as he's writing something down, he sees out of the corner of his eye, she's throwing something in the pot. And he's like, wait, what was that? She's like, what was what? So there's things that even my dad, who tried to get my grandma's recipe, doesn't completely understand. But he mostly got the recipe down. And he started doing grandma's gravy every Sunday when I was a kid. And I would wake up to the smell of meatballs, and I would oftentimes eat meatballs for breakfast that were like raw in the middle and cooked. As crazy what I ate as a kid. But anyway, so the sauce was incredible, and it was mostly like my grandma, but a little bit different because it's my dad, and there's like these mysteries of this sauce, right? So now let's talk about my sauce. So everybody loves my grandma's sauce, and my sauce is a little bit different because what I did is I went a little bit more farmer's market. And so with her sauce, it was very simple. It was mostly tomatoes and garlic and herbs, and then the flavoring of the meats that she would put in the sauce. Now, at the time I was vegetarian. And so when I was making my sauce and I was thinking about her sauce and what makes it good and the flavor balances, I was at the farmer's market and I picked up carrots, red peppers, fennel, onion, garlic, all fresh oregano, fresh basil, fresh parsley. Let me think if there's anything else in there. Tomatoes, of course, right? I would actually do tomatoes that were from the vine. Versus a lot of people, when they make tomato sauce, they use stewed tomatoes from the store, because stewed tomatoes are kind of cooked down. The water is cooked out of them a bit. So those were the main ingredients. And it's been a while since I've made this sauce. It's been a long time. So I've gotten out of the habit of cooking Italian. So it's been probably 7 years. But what I remember is in a pot, how many quart pot is that? I'm like, how many quart pots is this? See, this is the problem with recipes.
Yeah, you've become one of those people throwing in a little bit of this.
I've become one of those people. But I want to tell you a couple of things about this recipe. So the pan was, or the pot was like from the top of my head to maybe, here and like this wide. And I would usually use 2 onions. I'm trying to remember how many red peppers I would use. I'll only used red peppers because I wanted it to blend into the sauce. I did never use green or anything like that. So red peppers, and I think I used 2 red peppers, and then I would take a full fennel like bulb, like a good sized fennel bulb, chop all that up, and then I would say probably 6 medium-sized carrots, like medium-sized carrots. And so that's what I would say would probably be about it. And then a whole head of garlic, all of it. So that's the start. And then usually when I was at the market, I would pick up bags of tomatoes, because at the end of the season, they would have all these tomatoes for sale that were like sort of soft and, melted and all that jazz. Those were the perfect ones for sauce. So I'd pick up like a bag of tomatoes that was probably like this big. And this was before I had my own backyard gardens. So this is before BK Farmyards officially started. This was when this happened. So, okay, so those are the basic ingredients. A couple of things. My family has always seasoned the pot first. So olive oil on the bottom with all the garlic chopped up. And some of the herbs, not the basil, because the basil always wants to be as fresh as possible. So basically seasoning the pot with the olive oil, and then the cut up oregano, cut up parsley, and then the garlic. Season the pot with that. You don't want to burn the garlic unless you like the flavor of burnt garlic. Some people do, but I prefer it more like caramelized garlic. So I would cook it until the garlic was really, really caramelized. And then I would throw the onions in and caramelize those as much as possible. So I would let that simmer for a long time and just caramelize. And then I would throw in order of how much things needed to cook. And I often found that the carrots needed to cook longer, unless this is from my dad's trick, is he'll take and he'll use a peeler and he'll shave the carrots so that they kind of dissolve into the sauce a bit. So I would put the carrots in early, the fennel in a little bit early, and then I would put in the red pepper. And I just keep caramelizing until all that stuff is super duper soft. And then at that point, I'm going to put the tomatoes in, and I'm basically going to cover it and let as much moisture as possible cook off. Like that's really what I'm up to. So now here is my secrets. Okay. So if you are a fan of bolognese sauce, which is meat sauce, right? I used to do this contest with friends where we would do a bolognese off, where everybody would cook a bolognese. We wouldn't say what the ingredients in it, and then everybody would vote. And I would always show up with a vegan bolognese, not vegan, actually, vegetarian. And people were like, okay, I don't understand they're like, what is this? It's delicious, but we don't understand what this is. And I used to use, for my bolognese sauce, I used to add chopped up purple cauliflower, like super chopped up. So it almost looks like little meat bits. And I would put that in, and after the sauce was already cooked down, the tomatoes were cooked down, I would start to put that in and let that cook a bit. And here's my second. So you can leave that out if you don't want the bolognese effect. You can leave that out. And then my second super secret trick. Oh goodness. So this is tricky when it comes to preserving food. I'm going to talk about preserving this in a second. I would put in a rind of Parmesan. And I don't know if any of you have done this before, but it is one of the most amazing tricks in pasta sauce. You put in a big old rind, like I would put in one that's like this tall and like this thick. Sometimes I put in 3 or 4 in there. And what happens is the salty, amazing flavor of that Parmesan goes into the sauce, but the rind gets rubbery and tasteless. So you pull it out at the end, take it away and throw it away. Now, if you're going to preserve this sauce, there's a couple of tricks, because I want to really talk about this for a minute, because this is important for everybody listening. I want everybody to be really safe, everybody to feel great in their bodies, no getting sick on food. When you start to can food, canning food is one of the more dangerous ways of food preservation. Every other way, it's very hard to get sick, but canning, you can get sick. And what happens when you can is, if it's not acidic enough, then things like botulism, all these different things can come up. And what I'm sharing with you is not a recipe that's been approved by. When you're canning, you always want to follow an approved recipe so that you know you're not going to get sick. And so what I did, I'm a little bit of an experimenter. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll try it first to make sure. So what I would do is, with this sauce, if I didn't put in the Parmesan rind, because the Parmesan rind is the scariest part of canning it, because it's dairy. So if you leave that out, you're much safer. And what I would do is, I would take, at every preservation recipe that you see, it often says add lemon juice on top for your pasta sauces. And I remember when I first started preserving pasta sauce, I thought, isn't that going to affect the flavor? Isn't that like, I don't want lemons. I don't want my pasta sauce to taste like lemons. But the reality is that that's the preservation piece. And so your sauce never quite tastes like lemon. It's just part of that process. So I basically would look up, there's charts that say, if you have this many tomatoes and this many quarts and this many in this size and these different parameters, add this much lemon. And so what I did is, because I knew I had red peppers in there and carrots and fennel, and those things were things that were not quite as acidic as tomatoes, and potentially even cauliflower. What I did is, I basically like quadrupled the amount of lemon. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to quadruple the lemon. So this is not an approved recipe. So I want you guys to keep that in mind, because I don't want anybody to get sick. That's not my intention here. But if you want to make this recipe and just enjoy it for yourself and not can it, all good, right? And so what I did is, I put in a bunch of lemon juice. And then with the Parmesan rind one, I put in so much lemon juice because I was a little bit terrified. And it was actually really delicious. And I figured that even if I opened up the can and it was too lemony, that I could adjust, right? Like once you heat it up, then you can say, okay, it's a little bit lemony. What am I going to do to, move the flavor profile a little bit? So those are my secrets behind my sauce that my family always loved. And the bolognese off, people loved that recipe. When they found out it wasn't meat, they disqualified me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's probably thousands of these questions have come in. So now we know. Aren't you guys glad that you showed up for this private lesson on spaghetti sauce? And yeah, I put in the chat, like, whose mouth is watering. Sounds amazing. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And by the way, I'll just say this too. If you're somebody who does eat meat and you want to do a grandma's gravy recipe, the secret in my family was 3 parts. It was beef, pork, and veal, which is baby cow. So it's kind of beef, baby beef, and pork, 3 parts, equal parts in the meatballs, and then a whole bunch of spices and egg and all kinds of delicious spices in there. And then my dad would throw in homemade meatballs, and then he would get Italian sausages that were from a special market that were Italian sausages, and he would also put in veal shank. So he would put in a couple of veal shanks. So in a big pot, like this big, he's got all of that kind of simmering, and he would make it in the morning. He would make the meatballs at like 6 a.m. and then only fry up the outside, and the inside would be raw, put them in the sauce for them to cook the rest of the way, put all the meat in the sauce for it to cook over the course of the day. And then about 4 p.m. we would eat. So if you're somebody who does eat meat, that's the secret behind that piece of the puzzle.
Here's the thing about Stacy's sauce. It started with a pile of soft, end-of-season tomatoes most people wouldn't know what to do with. And if you grow your own food, you know that feeling. The harvest comes all at once, and half of it spoils before you can use it. That's exactly what Stacy teaches you to fix. She's put together a free masterclass, 3 simple strategies to preserve and store everything you grow. How to ferment, dehydrate, freeze, and quick pickle your harvest so you're eating your own food in the dead of winter instead of throwing it away in September. It's completely free. You can watch it anytime, and the link is right below. Go save your spot and turn this year's harvest into next winter's meals. It's completely free, and you can watch it anytime. Just go to growyourownvegetables.org/preserveclass. That's growyourownvegetables.org/preserveclass. Or grab the link in the description below. Go save your spot and turn this year's harvest into next winter's meals.